Hello folks, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. So welcome to another One Piece review. This time we're covering Manga chapter 1141. And I'm glad Oda used this chapter to bring the focus back on what this arc is actually about. And now people are really raising questions about the loyalty of King Harold and what his connection might be to the world government. Gee, I wonder who figured something was off right from the get-go. But we'll get to that, believe me. So let's start off with the cover page. And once again, we have Ulti pinned to a dartboard, only this time the focus is on Ulti and Page 1, who we come to find out is also there. He's on the ground, literally pinned down by a sword held by Who's Who. So that adds more fuel to the fire. We know Yamato and Who's Who are probably going to duke it out. Who's Who has this sword that Yamato was supposed to transport, so Yamato needs to get that back. But by extension, by defeating Who's Who, Yamato is also going to be helping Ulti and saving Page 1 at the same time. Like I said from the previous cover page, I see there being a compromise. I think there's a stronger possibility now when you add the emotional impact, because we know how Ulti reacts as far as Page 1 being threatened. I mean, look at how Ulti reacted to Big Mom when Page 1 got KO'd. Ulti pulled up on a Yonko. Granted, she got taken down, but she still managed to recover and finish the fight with Nami. That's going to come into play. Like I said, if Yamato is coming in to save the day, that adds another aspect of, does Ulti and Page 1 actually join Yamato? Because I'm kind of wondering, what's the end game here? What's going to happen once Yamato finishes this grand tour and transports the katana? There has to be a reason why Ulti and Page 1 are involved, otherwise what's the point? So maybe, I'm just throwing it out there, maybe there's going to be a compromise and maybe Yamato is going to enlist the help of Ulti and Page 1. I know it's a stretch, but you got to really ask, why are they incorporated in this if they're not going to play a factor? Especially with what we saw during the German 66 evacuation cover story, where we know for a fact Judge, Caesar Clown and Judge, members of MADS, have now joined up after the evacuation cover story for Gemma 66. Also, let's not also forget the impact that the Blackbeard pirates had coming into Whole Cake Island, kidnapping Pudding, and what role that had in that very same chapter. So you can throw that out the window as far as this cover story maybe not having a role in the actual story. I disagree, so we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, if that's where this is going, like I said in the last cover story, in the last review, sign me up. We start the chapter off and immediately Nami and Road are heading back from Aura's castle on the ship with the injured guards from inside the castle. So they're heading back to the village to join the festivities of the feast. Meanwhile, we get somewhat of a substitution by the end of this chapter. That's what it looks like. So, but Nami's ticked off because obviously she didn't get a treasure. There's no treasure in there. So unfortunately Nami is not going to get any treasure from Elbaph unless there's something else that's hidden. Nami's yelling and Rose trying to calm Nami down because the guards are still awake. But turns out it's not good of a matter considering what we get by the end of this chapter. So then we switch it, and I'm glad Oda used this chapter to focus on what most of the Straw Hats are doing, but not all of them. So we go to Frankie and we go to the Tree Tour group, even though technically it's Frankie and Ripley, but Ripley's giving the explanation about the tree, which is kind of cool. So obviously we know it's the base of Elbaph, the Adam tree and the wood that's made from it. But we kind of find out one of the branches that was attached to this tree once upon a time got struck with lightning and it caught fire, but nobody wanted to put that out, or nobody could put that out. And considering they didn't want it to spread to the villagers, they decided to sever that entire branch. Conveniently, it has a hole in it, which I'm sure is not going to go unnoticed pretty soon. So just keep that in mind. Not too long ago, Shanks came into Elbaph after already declaring he was going to seek out the One Piece. Why would he come to Elbaph if it wasn't going to have an impact on finding the One Piece? So I'm just going to throw it out there. You got a piece of that tree with a hole in it. I'm going to leave it at that. According to Ripley, because of that, that's Elbaph's biggest weakness, fire and lightning. So I guarantee you, one, if not both of those, two of those holy knights are fire or lightning users. I'm throwing it out there right now. So we go to the Western Village, back to the feast. Nami joins Usopp. Jinbei and Brook, which, as well as Ja Rule, and Usopp is hyping up Nami. It's like, hey, isn't she a beauty? And you can tell Usopp's already drunk because of the way he's acting. But, oh, she's totally your type, right? You're pervy old man. And shout out to Ja Rule, he's being a real one. But even though technically nobody's going to deny Nami, but Ja Rule is like, he's like, being honest, he's like, I'm into older women. And for whatever reason, Usopp, drunk out of his mind, just slaps the hell out of the sword that's inside Ja Rule's head. That forces Dory to like grab him. Was like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, what the fuck is Usopp doing? But yeah, this is how you know he's drunk as hell, because no Usopp sober would ever do this, ever. You have this like entire panel. Like, first off, it's completely ridiculous. First off, you have Usopp drunk off his ass, trying to hype up Nami, slapping the hell out of Ja Rule. Then you have Dory grabbing a hold of Usopp's like, yo, knock it off. And then you have Brook with his head by his crotch. I'm not making this up. And then Nami's expression sells this entire panel, in my opinion. Like, it's so ridiculous. You have like Usopp like saying, hey, anyone trying to pull that sword out? You got Brogy in the background. It's like, no, don't do that, because the blood loss will kill him. Like, that sword in his head, being stuck in his head, is actually saving him, because if he pulled it out, he would die. Never mind the fact that he's 400 years old. But so then you got Brook saying he's completely drunk out of his ass, like I said, with his head off his neck by his crotch, saying this, and then Nami's face with that expression says, look who's talking. That just sold the entire panel for me. Nami kind of like warms up because Usopp acting this way. He's only acting this way because he's finally reached Elbaph, even though he's drunk off his ass. So if there's anything we can take away from this whole scenario, is that Usopp is more brave after drinking a lot of alcohol and becoming drunk. So hopefully Zoro can lend him some alcohol going into his 1v1 if Usopp does get a fight, which I do believe he will. This actually hints at another interesting aspect of this entire chapter, where we see Sanji and he's looking for Gerd, but Gerd has disappeared, questioning Rodo about what the hell he was doing and why there's 200 guards coming from the castle, and that no normal human could have caused these type of injuries. So she interrogates Rodo literally. It's like, out of it, what the hell happened? He's actually panicking because if Loki goes running amok before Luffy gets back, he'll be labeled a co-conspirator, which technically he kind of is, because he was is the accomplice to the crime. Although technically speaking, that's not going to make much difference by the end of this chapter. So the thing that, although he's kind of worried about the lookalike of red hair that's roaming around, obviously Shamrock, but we don't even know if he's sticking around, especially after the ending of the last chapter. I hope Oda doesn't do anything like take him out of the equation after all that hype build. While he's thinking this, in comes Gerd, because she wants answers. She nails him again with that axe, because Gerd knows, like, you know something, so spill it. So we cut to probably the most intense part of the chapter, and finally Zoro and Luffy finding Loki injured, but he's alive, which is important to know. Luffy has the key, and they contemplate what to do because, well, Luffy's not, but Zoro is, because Zoro, with these injuries, this kind of changes things a little bit. Because you see, Luffy immediately tried to free Loki. Zoro's like, yo, hold it off a minute, pump your brakes, because they see all the wild beasts that got taken down. I like how Zoro's hyping him. He's big even for a giant. So they go back and forth, and it leads to an argument between Zoro and Luffy, like what to do, because, like, Luffy's like, this giant's about to die, we gotta help him. Like, this is the guy that like punched Loki after bad-mouthing Shanks, but he actually wants to help him out. Then Zoro's like, we don't owe him anything, we shouldn't take his reputation lightly, Luffy, and that this guy is as big as Oz. So this is the third time now that Oz has been mentioned, so I wonder if that's going to come into effect. So that hyping him up, Zoro's hyping him up more specifically, because so I like there's a back and forth between Luffy and Zoro about what to do, because actually Zoro's actually rationally thinking about this, but Zoro, speaking of rationally, he irrationally goes ahead, jumps in, kicks Loki, and all it does is wake him up. Because you see him yell, and Zoro figures out, yeah, these wounds, they seem legit, they're not fake. Yeah. Now when I saw this, I'm like, oh boy, we're gonna get Zoro versus Loki already? Cool. But no, at least not yet. But Loki wakes up, he's like, what the hell? And then he flops down, like, And then Luffy's the one that responds he's dead, and then Zoro's response is cold as ice. So it's like, if he was dead, that's simply his fate. Like, oh, this fucking loser, that's meant to be. But then Zoro kind of like glosses up the idea, okay, I'll go along with unlocking him, but I've got the key, and we'll unlock his upper body, but we're leaving his legs restrained with sea stone. I like this thinking by Zoro. Zoro's reasoning is not only, obviously we're leaving him somewhat restrained, but also we can talk it out more and find out once he regains consciousness. So then after that, Luffy's like, okay, I'll go find Chopper. And Zoro's like, no, because that's too far away. The library's too far away. But then Zoro's like, maybe we'll find a doctor partying back at the village. Yeah, I'm pretty sure there is a doctor with the new giant warrior pirates. But we'll get to that by the end because she tags along for the ride. So it goes hand in hand here with where this is going. Then Luffy kind of responds rationally. It says, if we freed him, won't they banish us? Then Zoro's like, we got no choice. We'll be banished. So I'm going to call it Doctor. So, and this actually surprised me because even though it's kind of a gag, this turns into something a lot more serious than I thought it was going to be. So Luffy says, we should also stock up on meat. Knowing you won't be at your best if you don't eat. I mean, that could be said for Luffy since he went into Gear 5th. So hopefully this is a way of making them both full and for being nerfed like we got in Nugget Island. So hopefully we get none of that here. But then Zoro, again, cold as ice, like, oh, there's plenty of meat over there, referring to the wild beasts. Luffy, he's like, don't even joke about that. Those guys are my friends. I can go hunting in the mountains later on. But then Zoro's, again, back at it with the just being casual as hell. It's usually Luffy that's, like, being casual. Zoro's being calm and level-headed for the most part. Luffy's freaking out because Zoro's like, meat is meat, and then Luffy's like, anybody who comes my friend is off the menu. So I like that from Luffy, but that surprised the hell out of me. Wasn't this the same guy that threatened to eat Chopper at one point on the way to Whole Cake Island? But then as Luffy's about to go search for a doctor, comes the new giant warrior pirates on their ship Zvar. They're crash landing because Harudin is like panicking because he's gotten word what's going on here. So they tried to like ride one of the island clouds. It doesn't work because they can't sustain themselves within this domain. So they're about to crash land, and immediately not only do you see the crew, but you also see Sanji. Luffy uses Gum Gum Balloon to like save them from crash landing, so that was pretty cool. So while thanking Luffy for like saving them, he's like trying to like plead with Luffy. He's like, don't go through with this and free Loki. And they're like, you can't trust Loki. I love how he's telling Luffy this while he's telling lies ever since he was kids. You got Luffy in the background, like kind of like with the classic Luffy face when he's telling a lie. This is all building towards whether or not Loki can be trusted, but really that's not what's going to matter here. Harudin is like hyping this guy up to be the threat of the world. Zoro's like, you're too late because number one, he had the key, and number two, he already freed the upper half of Loki because it's like, you're already too late. He's standing up, he's rising up. That's a boss level panel, I gotta say. As Loki finally stands for the first time in this arc. And Luffy thought he was knocked out cold, but no, it's like he's awake and he grabs hold of the Ragnir, his weapon. So that's even more monstrous to find out what that's gonna do. It makes sense too because his ankles are like shackled, if you noticed, as that chapter ends with Loki partially freed. Like, remember what Zoro said, like the upper half is free, but he also has a weapon now, so you know shit's about to go down. So that's how the chapter ends. This is definitely leading to a couple of scenarios here. Obviously, maybe a fight. It's going to either be Luffy or Zoro at this point, and because of the fact that the way that Zoro was acting in this chapter, like, I can definitely see Zoro versus Loki, but maybe I guess the safe option is Luffy could have faced Loki, or we could not get a fight at all. We'll have to wait and see, but that's how the chapter ends. Like, you got the Harudin and his crew, like, trying to, like, talk Luffy out of, like, doing something stupid by saying, oh, he can't be trusted, he's a ruthless killer beyond redemption. I'm banking on there being a resolution by the end of this. It's looking like Oda is getting us closer to the resolution that I thought, because he's already he's back at it again with the fast pacing in Elbaph. Like, he's not wasting any time. So the secret's out mostly. Like I said at the beginning, we got a substitution. It looks like we substituted Nami out for Sanji. So I don't know if that's going to lead into Sanji doing something epic. I hope. But we had the original Straw Hat Trio, and now we have the Monster Trio here. But all this talk about the can't be any redemption for Loki, that's been bullshit since day one. Since I called this out since chapter 130, which is when we first touched land on Elbaph, where we first got the hype of Loki, really, before Luffy even met Loki. Remember when Robin was talking with Dorian Broggy and his crew, and they were hyping this guy up as being the accursed prince. Remember that? How he ate a legendary devil fruit. He stole the legendary devil fruit. He ate it. That's been passed down through the generations throughout Elbaph. He ate that. He killed King Harold. It was in that same chapter where we got the introduction of Goldberg and Gerd, two members of the new giant warrior pirates, being Gerd and Goldberg. Goldberg being the cook, Gerd being the doctor. That's another thing that's gonna come into play, because it was also in that same chapter where she immediately speaks of her disdain about Road, and pretty much goes on to say Loki's not the shame of Elbaph. Road is. I mean, damn, that's some massive shade, considering that everybody on Elbaph from that generation and before are kind of vilifying Loki. Even if you want to go so far as to say that's pretty much a quirk of Gerd as she piles on Road, fair enough. Chapter 1136, when Jarul is like talking to the Straw Hats about not only the sun god Nika and how revered it is and how people worship and idolize Nika to the point that they want to become sun god Nika themselves. That included King Harold and Loki. And immediately that got brushed down by Harodin and his crew by saying, no, there's no justifying his actions. And they immediately shut that down. But even after that, then Luffy goes on to say, oh, Loki, so he's a nice guy. Again, a gag for Luffy, but it quickly got shut down by Harodin and his crew. It's like, hell no, he's not a good guy. In my opinion, this is leading to like Gerd making a decision and whether or not he's good. Because, listen, like, Zoro said they needed a doctor to patch him up so they can like get him to talk. That's the whole reason he undid most of the shackles. But they got a doctor in the form of Gerd, so Gerd's going to make a decision, and it could very well impact where Elbaph goes next. I think she's going to patch up Loki, and the whole talk about King Harold being a traitor after the ending of the last chapter, yeah, that's great and all. But listen, I already said from the get-go, something about that situation didn't sit right, ever since it was mentioned. And these hints came even before Gunko and Shamrock arrived inside the Oris Castle, where it's not meant for anybody but King Harold. Harodin is prohibited from going inside because of his mother coming from a different giant nation. And that was in chapter 1137 where we got that mentioned, where the Straw Hats saw the portrait of King Harold. And I thought it was kind of odd. I didn't really give it too much thought, but now that you put certain things together, and a lot of people are going with King Harold as a traitor because of what was mentioned in the last chapter. Meanwhile, I've been saying something was off from the get-go about this. Loki probably knows what that is. So the first instance is when King Harold apparently ripped off his horns to because he was rejecting the remembering what the previous era, the blood-soaked era of Elbaph represented. And initially, but in that same sequence, he rejected Harodin's mother because she didn't come from Elbaph itself. So why would he reject somebody from not coming from Elbaph, but yet rip his horns out for literally rejecting the way that Elbaph used to be during the war era? That doesn't make any sense. Another thing that kind of does match up, like the fact that Loki's mother was named the Queen, and she was the official queen that King Harold ended up marrying. But in chapter 1136, again, that was where the prophecy of King Harold prophesied that his son would end up killing him. So that doesn't match up either. I questioned it back then, like, who came up with that prophecy? Like, and that's where the resolution is going to come in, because nobody except Luffy believes Loki right now, because Luffy, even though it was a casual it wasn't a throwaway comment, I can tell you that right now. Oda does not have Luffy say, oh, he's a nice guy, just for the hell of it. So, no. Am I the only one that's going to question who was the queen and why was that mentioned if it wasn't prevalent? Why was Haradine's mother rejected, but Loki's mother wasn't? So, is that something connected to the world government or not? And so this is only two scenarios. I mentioned this once when Frankie discovered the hieroglyphics, and we got the awesome lore drop. But by the way, we didn't get any mention of that in this chapter. Gee, I wonder why. I wonder if Oda's waiting for another character to like bring up the information and then see this for herself in the name of Robin. Why was there a magic circle used for ritual summonings from the Gorosei and now the Holy Knights? Why was that in the castle to begin with? Did anybody else but me feel that was strange and decided to call that out? Because I'm pretty sure I called that out. When we got the Lord Drop reveal a couple of chapters ago, I said it's either one or two things. Either the battle, the final war involving Joy Boy and Emu happened on Elbaph, and that's where this magic circle got planted, or there's a traitor in the ranks, or there's something that doesn't meet the eye here. And I thought something was off even before Gunko and Shamrock appeared. So now, yeah, this is hopefully going to lead us to a flashback, which we kind of need to explain what the hell's going on here. Like I said, all but Luffy, I'm pretty sure, are going to buy what Loki says. They better patch things up real quick, because they're going to face the same enemy pretty soon in the form of the Holy Knights. Conveniently, we did not see in this chapter. But I see this panel of Loki starting up, and all I'm thinking is, damn, Shamrock, you fucked up. You fucked up massively, because now things have changed. And considering the fact that he has a weapon, I'm leaning towards Zoro, but the safe choice is Luffy, because that's Oda's go-to. But that would just write Oda into a corner, personally. Like, okay, are you really going to have Luffy going to Gear 5th again, or Gear 4th? And technically, Loki's kind of nerfed anyway, so it's not Luffy that has the trust issues, it's Zoro and everybody else about Loki. So I wouldn't be surprised, but Oda could go with the safe route and his go-to with Luffy versus Loki. That could happen by the end. It should happen before the end, but not right now. Like, because again, it doesn't make sense. Luffy's not the one having trust issues. It's everybody else. So that's where the resolution's got to come in. Like I said, Sanji's also in the mix. I don't know what. Unfortunately, a little bit too late considering Scappa already fled. But like I said, I'm glad Oda used this chapter to like focus on what this arc actually is about in Elbaph, and the content to me that actually matters, and that's the stuff involving Loki and getting the truth, as well as like finding out what's going to happen involving the Holy Knights. But let me know what you guys think down below. I thought it was a great chapter and a beast ending. That's going to do it for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. You guys know what to do. If you enjoyed this review, hit that thumbs up. I appreciate that. I appreciate the support when it comes to One Piece reviews, and I'll catch you guys later. Thanks guys. Bye.